Welcome to this module of Professor Messer's free CompTIA A+ certification training course on diagnostic utilities and tools. I'm James Messer, and in this module, we're going to talk about the CompTIA exam requirements from A+ on 220-601 and 220-602, and a lot of different information across a lot of different sections. We're going to talk a lot about the tools, diagnostics procedures, and troubleshooting techniques, and we're really going to talk about some very specific operating system utilities, not only on what these utilities are, but I'll step you through a process of how you might use them to solve the problems. There are a number of applications and tools available right in the operating system that can help you solve these issues. So we're going to learn about where we can go to find more information about these tools, what the task and device manager do, our event viewer, a program called MS-config, our recovery CD. We'll go through remote desktop, system file checker, registry editor, and computer management. Now, fortunately, a number of these tools are all integrated together on our Windows desktop, and you may have seen these also talked about in other videos. But I thought it would be nice to consolidate all of these different tools together into one video and give you an idea of some of the things you can use or you might be asked about on the A+ exam and how they could be used to solve problems. We'll start with how we get documentation and what resources are available for us for documentation. Now, obviously, if we have a desktop machine, a laptop computer, a monitor, a keyboard, there's probably going to be some documentation from the manufacturer. Sometimes that documentation is extremely good. Sometimes that documentation is extremely bad. And so it's often a hit and miss type scenario when you run into these. So very often you go online and you almost always are finding something relating to these pieces of hardware you're using. You can most of the time find some information, but on very rare occasions, you may type in a particular piece of hardware and get nothing. And it does happen. So when you miss, it really misses. But fortunately, if you go to the manufacturers, they can often help you. I was working with an older piece of equipment very recently that I had purchased third party. It had come to me with no documentation whatsoever. Thought no problem, we'll go to the manufacturer's website. But the manufacturer's website didn't have a thing there. Had every other manual you could expect to find. I just sent a message to their tech support and said, do you have this manual? And they were able to send it to me. And they actually said to me, I didn't realize we didn't have this on the website. I'll put it on our website so that others can access that piece of information. Sometimes the information you're looking for is institutional. It's something that's been built over time in an organization. Oh, the only person who happens to know how that was put together was the person who did it 5 years ago. And so that person is going to be a very helpful resource. And it may be time to document that process and get that person involved in documenting where that came from so that other people are able to take advantage of that documentation resource, even if that person doesn't happen to be in the building at that particular time. Fortunately, with Windows, you don't have to rely on a lot of third parties. There are a number of utilities built into Windows that gives you a lot of information. And we'll start with our task manager and our device manager. The task manager tells you what's happening right now. It gives you a second-by-second update of exactly what's going on with memory, with disk usage, with CPU utilization. You can find whatever system, driver, or utility is hogging your resources very easily by using the task manager. The device manager tells you what these programs are using. What piece of hardware is being accessed? Are all of your devices loading properly? Are there problems with the drivers loading for these systems? We get to the device manager and the task manager in different ways, but once we have them up and running, we get a wealth of information. The task manager is very easy to find. If you right mouse click anywhere in your taskbar at the bottom, you'll see an option for task manager. Optionally, you can hit Control-Alt-Delete and you may have the task manager open automatically, or it may give you an option within that Control-Alt-Delete menu to start the task manager. And what you'll expect to see is something like this. My task manager was last left off on their performance tab, but you can see there's other tabs here as well. If I'm running any applications, it'll list those out. There are none on my screen at the moment, so it's not listing any. But even though there's nothing on my screen, there are a lot of processes that are happening behind the scenes. So clicking the Processes tab really takes you into a second-by-second update of exactly what's going on. I've expanded my view out here to show a lot of different columns. You can put a lot of information on the screen, and once you become accustomed to working with this, you can find very quickly how to find the application using the most memory. You can see who's using the most CPU. You can see if the problems with disk reads or disk writes, which may have no impact on the CPU, but still may cause your system to appear sluggish. So I added a number of those different statistics and pieces of information to the top of my processes screen. And I can sort these by clicking on them, and you can start to see exactly what services, what devices, what processes on your system happen to be using the most number of resources. Accessing the device manager is a little bit different. The device manager we can find in our start menu under settings. In the control panel, there is a system option. And underneath the system option is a hardware tab that finally has in it our device manager. That's a lot of clicks and a lot of options, but something you need to know about how to get to the device manager, because you might be asked about that on the exam. You can also get to the device manager from our computer management screen. So I'm going to close out all of these windows. I'm going to right mouse click on my computer and I'm going to choose Manage. And one of the options right under our computer management screen is this device manager. That was a lot simpler than going through that process of going to the control panel and going into system. But if you don't have a My Computer on your desktop, you really don't have any other choice. Our device manager lists out for us all of the different devices on our computer. So if we wanted to highlight and click the plus sign next to some of these, you'll start to see some of the devices and pieces of hardware and drivers that are loaded on our computer. And if we right mouse click on any of these and choose properties, you'll get feedback on whether this device is working or not. And it'll tell you that the device is working properly, or it'll tell you the device is not working properly. It's not able to communicate with it properly, and that you may need to load new drivers or try enabling that particular device. We have a whole section, another video that talks about device drivers. But if you're ever asked on the exam, how would you know if a piece of hardware was working properly? How would you know if a piece of hardware had started up and that Windows is able to use it properly? You'll know that your device manager is where you should go to see that. The Event Viewer is another utility on your Windows system that you're going to go to quite a bit to see what's going on, because it is an eye in the sky. It watches everything going on and saves it into a big log that just contains everything about application problems, security issues. If you get a blue screen of death for some reason, all of that diagnostic information is written into the Event Viewer. And when devices start up, when applications begin and close out normally, you'll even see that information in your Event Viewer as well. So this can really speed up the troubleshooting process. If somebody comes to you and says, something happened yesterday, I need you to go back and figure out what happened. The Event Viewer is great because the problem's already gone. It's not happening anymore, but there may be something in the event log that can help you understand what's going on. So there are fewer questions that you have to ask about what the exact error message was, what they might have seen. You can go right to where it was written into your event log and see for yourself. The Event Viewer is in our administrative tools. So if we go to our Start menu and go to our settings inside of our control panel, we're going to choose the Administrative Tools option, and inside of there is the Event Viewer. Now, as I did before with the My Device Manager, I could right mouse click on my computer and choose Manage, and the Event Viewer also will be one of those options underneath there. We're just going to start it up as standalone mode since we're already here, and you can see those Event Viewer logs are here. I've got 4 logs on my system, and your system may have more or less depending on what you've installed on your system. And you can go into your application log or your security log or your system log and see exactly what happened over time. I can really go quite a ways back in time and even see when problems might be happening with a utility, with a program. Here's one that has a problem that a system restore filter encountered an unexpected error. So if somebody was coming to you and said, I got this message pop up, I was trying to perform this function, I got an error, this may be where we go. There's a copy command in here that can copy that information to the clipboard, and then we can email that off to technical support and get more information that might help us resolve this issue. Another program that you'll go back to again and again is one called MS-config, and you'll keep using it a lot because it shows you everything you need to see about the startup process and configurations on your system. You can select and deselect selectively what you would like to see start up when you begin your system. So if somebody's having a problem during their startup process where an error pops up or your Windows isn't starting up the way you would like, you can completely disable sections, you can turn programs on and off, you can do it all from this MS-config. This also allows you to change settings within your boot.ini. So if you'd like to add on some different parameters, you'd like to change some parameters, this allows you to do it in very graphical mode, allows you to make these changes without having to worry too much that you've typed something in wrong or that you've messed up this process. Because as you recall, if boot.ini is messed up or has any type of problem associated with it, your Windows is not going to run properly. This is also where we can enable and disable services that start up whenever we begin our machine. We can say that certain applications are going to run or not run when you start your computer up. And there's a number of other tools available to you whenever you use msconfig that you're able to get to just by clicking instead of having to go to the run command and remember what commands you need to know to start up those programs. You won't find msconfig in any of the menu settings. You're going to have to start that one up manually under Start Run, and we'll type msconfig and hit enter. This is the system configuration utility, and as I mentioned before, these tabs across the top allow you to change things like your boot any file. You can change what services are starting up when you begin your computer, where the startup programs are, and as we mentioned, those one clicks to get to those tools. And as I mentioned, you're going to come back to this utility again and again because starting up your system, so many different things can get lumped together, especially over time, that if you ever need to start weeding some things out to improve the efficiency of the startup process, this application, msconfig, is a great place to go because then you can start really breaking down exactly what's happening during the startup and begin enabling or disabling entire sections of this startup process to help speed things along. If you've ever bought a brand new computer, you know that one of the things that might come with this is something called a recovery CD. What we're finding on newer systems is that this is turning into a recovery partition, that you may have a very big hard drive. You may have gotten a 500 gig hard drive in your system, but what you're going to find in your operating system is that it's only 480 gig. For some reason, 20 gig of this is not exactly where you would expect it to be. What the manufacturer has done is they've saved off an entire restore partition so that if you ever run into any problems, you can completely wipe your machine clean and put a factory fresh install on it without requiring any additional CDs or DVDs. This is really optional. Not every manufacturer does this, but we're seeing it's becoming more and more common out there. Usually there's a secret keystroke that you hit on your keyboard when your system is booting up, and it's usually something built into the BIOS. So this is very specific to a manufacturer. If you have a Dell computer, there's a specific Dell keystroke. If you have a HP computer, there's a specific HP keystroke you have to do to get this to work right. And usually it's something that's not really secret. It's documented somewhere in your documentation or on the internet. It's very easy to find once you start looking for it. If you're working in a corporate environment, usually the recovery partition information isn't stored on someone's hard drive. It's something that's usually kept on a centralized server. And if a machine needs to have a fresh image associated with it, they'll start up that machine remotely or they'll start it up at someone's desk and it will install it from that separate server. So you don't need a separate partition. Everything comes from a central place out on the network. If you ever have the CD with you and it comes with your computer, make sure you keep it handy. Because it has an operating system on it, the manufacturers don't tend to send you extra copies of these things. And since they're so large, they're not easily downloadable over the internet if even the option is available to you. So make sure you keep that handy. You're probably not going to get another one. If you've ever managed computers before, you know that when someone has a problem, it can occasionally be a difficult process to go up from your desk, go to that person's machine and see what's going on. This is much more difficult if that user is in another building, another location, another state, another country. Microsoft, however, has thought of this and has built into the operating system a way that you can remotely connect to that device to see what's going on. This is called our remote desktop connection, and this allows us to take control of another person's desktop over the network. This is something that is extremely useful no matter where someone might be located. And one of the challenges you're going to have, though, is because this is across the network, you're going to want to make sure that the firewall settings are correct all the way through the link. These aren't using things like web browsers to communicate. This is a specialized application, and your firewalls have to be configured to allow that application to traverse the network. But once you have things configured, you can save an enormous amount of time because you don't even have to get up from your seat to help someone with a problem they might be having. And if you need to make a change to a registry, you need to look at an event log, you want to see the message on the screen that the user is getting, you can just simply connect to that person's computer and see what they see. Even though I'm using Windows Vista, I can still connect to other computers that are running Windows XP or Windows 2000. It doesn't matter because I'm not running their operating system. I'm simply connecting to their device and getting an image of what happens to be on their screen. And this is also useful because I can run this exact same program if I'm in Windows XP or Windows 2000. It works exactly the same. And in this particular case, I'm going to connect to my remote device 192.168.0.11. And I'm going to hit enter. And it's going to go out to that device and it's going to connect to it and say, great, you can log in. What login name would you like to use? And I'll put in my username and password that allows me to access that machine. And it's going to pop up on my screen the same desktop that that user is using. So I can start to see exactly the programs that they're using. I can see what they're doing on their screen. I know exactly the same thing that they happen to be running at this time. And now I'm on their device. Even though this looks like I'm still on my same workstation, we can see this bar across the top. And what this is showing me is that I'm not only running my desktop, but I'm also running their desktop at the same time. This can occasionally get very confusing if you happen to have a lot of these things on the screen at the same time. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you start to use remote desktop, you can save in a huge amount of time. Instead of getting up from your desk and going out somewhere else, you could sit in one place and see what's going on. If you've ever dealt with a virus infestation or spyware that's on your system, one of the things you may want to do right after you've removed that virus or spyware is you may want to check to see if all of the system files on your machine are exactly the way you left them. So there's a built-in program called the System File Checker, which checks the integrity of all your system files. And as it goes through all of your system files, it will replace ones that may have been damaged or don't seem right. The checksums aren't exactly the way it was expecting to see them. So it will replace the incorrect versions. So this is going to make a change to your system. You want to make sure that you have a backup just in case a file is overwritten that you really did need to have in your Windows system. The program that runs this is sfc.exe, and there's a number of different options available, and you can always put a slash in the option after it, such as scan now, to go through and scan your hard drive and make sure that the files that are there are the correct versions. You run the SFC program at the command line. So let's start a command prompt here with our run command and type CMD and hit enter. And if we type just SFC and hit enter, you'll see that this starts the Windows file checker. And the one in Windows XP is one that goes through your system files and it begins replacing files in there that are not the correct ones. It puts the correct Microsoft program in place. So again, make sure you have a backup and that you're aware when this thing starts replacing files that if you reboot your machine and there's a change, you may need to revert back to some of those other pieces. So let's do an SFC. Notice that you could have it do it next time it boots up in case there's certain files that are open, or you can choose just to scan now. And it's going to start the process and say that it's going to go and verify that all the protected Windows files are intact and in their original versions. So at this point, this takes a bit of time. There are a number of system files that Windows has, and you can see this counter on the screens moving very slowly as it steps through those. So this is not something that happens extremely quickly, but it is very thorough in what it's doing. And as it finds different files, it will copy them back, and then it will prompt you to reset your machine, reboot your machine so that those files can be put back into use again. The Registry Editor is another one of those programs that you're going to go back to again and again because that's where all of the configuration settings in your machine are stored. This is a massive configuration library. And because of that, if you ever start making changes to anything in the configuration library, you can cause a lot of problems. So you want to be sure not to make any guesses when you make changes into this. The program that starts this is one called regedit.exe or regedt32.exe. In Windows 2000, these were really two separate programs that had two separate capabilities. In Windows XP, those programs have been brought together. So no matter which one you run, it's really going to start up the same program for you. To start regedit, we go to our command line and type run, and I'm going to do regedt32 and hit enter. And this is the Registry Editor. You can see here that on the left side are a number of keys. This is the hive of the registry, and everything is separated into separate folders. It's very well organized. So if you ever need to find anything, it will tell you exactly where you want to go. Everything at the top set of hives in the registry is under My Computer, and there's an H key, classes root, current user, local machine, users, or current config. So the H key stands for Hive key. And as I mentioned, these separate sections of the registry are called hives. Everything that deals with configuration of the local machine is in the Hive key local machine. Everything that deals with the current logged in user is under H key current user. So check the documentation or the technical note, the troubleshooting tool that's telling you here's what you need to change in your registry, and make sure you make that change in the right place. Once you find the things that you're going to want to change, it's going to show up on the right side of your screen, and you would double click to change or edit that particular string. Make sure that when you make a change change here that you're making exactly the change you would expect. When you click OK, it goes right into use, right into work. It doesn't wait for you to save it. It doesn't wait for you to make one button updates. As soon as you make the change, it goes into play. So if you change anything, you delete anything, you make any updates, they will take effect immediately. There's no waiting or delays associated with that. So make sure as you go through here again that you know exactly what you're going to change and that the change you make is not going to cause a problem for you in the future. A lot of these utilities can be started from one screen, the computer management tool. And the computer management tool is nice because everything is in one place called this Microsoft Management Console. And if you even have tools from third parties, they'll often plug into that management console, which really gives you a one-stop shop. You go to one place to really do everything. You can access your events, your user accounts, your storage management, your services, and much more, all from this computer management screen. You can get to the computer management in a couple of different ways. If you right mouse click My Computer and choose Manage, it takes you right into the computer management screen. But if for some reason the My Computer icon is not on your desktop, you can always go to Start. Under Settings in your control panel, there is an Administrative Tools option, and there's a Computer Management selection in there. So either way will take you to the same place, this computer management screen. As you can see, your event viewers in here. You can look at all the shared folders that are on your system. You can see the local users and groups that are on your system. Look at performance logs, your device manager, all your disk information, and finally, all of the services and application settings that are running on your machine. So really a wealth of information in this computer management screen, and you're going to find yourself just starting that single program so that you can access all of these things from one place. We've gone through a lot of different diagnostics tools in this video. We've gone through a number of documentation resources. We've talked about your task manager and your device manager, looked into your event viewer, and then we dealt with more configuration tools like MS-config and your recovery CD. We even connected to other devices with your remote desktop. We ran a system file checker. We went through your registry, and finally we showed you how all of these things are rolled up in your computer management screen. If you'd like to see more A+ videos, participate in our message board, see what's on our wiki, or much more, you can visit our website, freeaplus.com.